Ayan, and now we are live. Hi, hello, magandang tanghali, good afternoon everyone. Welcome back to another session of Career Talk Thursdays. I'm Roan and I'll be your host for today. So, ito na yung 8th session natin for our Career Talk Thursdays. And we will be talking about job interview tips, questions to ask during an interview. So, malalaman natin today kung ano ba yung mga right questions na tatanungan natin sa interviewer natin and ano ba yung importansya or importance nito sa ating job application. But before we start, I want to let everyone know that this event is hosted by Prospel Philippines. So ano nga ba si Prospel? Prospel is a career portal and jobs board specifically designed for students and fresh graduates. We help you get the best start to your careers by providing you all the information, day in the life articles, career events, and jobs that are for you. So, samahan nyo kami today na magkwentuhan, magchikahan, and actually, sa backstage pa lang, nagchichikahan na kami ng guest speaker natin for today. So, i-make sure ko sa inyo na may enjoy niyo yung webinar natin for today. So, before we begin, let me introduce our guest speaker for this session. Hannah Manapat recently joined Korn Ferry as an onboarding and training consultant. She has been in the training business for 3.5 years now, but she started her career as a call center agent in 2015 before becoming a trainer in 2019. Then a trainer supervisor in 2021, which led her to Korn Ferry as a training consultant. She finished her bachelor's degree in English in PUP Santa Mesa and explored different career paths, sorry, as a writer, recruiter. Nakikita ko na nakasmile na siya sa backstage. Oh. Naririnig ko na rin yung tawa niya ngayon. And onboarding specialist. She is passionate about food, books, and travels, and has a long-term goal of traveling. Sorry na naririnig ko talaga yung tawa niya sa backstage. Traveling the world to help and inspire people be the very best version of themselves. So let's all welcome Hannah Manapat. Ayan, kamustahin muna natin siya. Ayan, para makita yung tawa niya.
Hi,
Ayan, oh,
Rowan.
diba? Hello!
Hello.
Ayan, ano na pala kami ngayon? Besties na kami.
Aha.
Oo, besties. So,
Actually,
ayan.
pwede naman
Oo.
yung career fat. So one thing I gained other than experience is weight. So yeah.
So, ganun na ba 'pag nagtatrabaho na tayo, ganyan, meron na tayong sariling
That's true
kayamanan,
too.
charot, ayan.
So yung viewers natin na
Kayamanan.
yung mga fit pa na viewers natin today, pagka alam mo, as you go through your career path, naging career fat
Mhm.
na din siya. I'm kidding, but yeah.
So, yun yung word natin for today's video.
Yes.
Directly proportional ba yun? Ayan, meron ng mga nagko-comment, oh. Ayan, meron ka ditong supporter. Gano'n. So, ayan, kumusta naman today, Hannah?
I'm actually doing good. I'm very excited about this kasi just a bit of a background. For the past 3 years of my career in training, I've always been passionate about helping, especially those who are just starting their careers. So yung early years of my career as a trainer really was spent helping, new employees exceed their potential basically. So I'm really excited that this topic was assigned to me because I think this is something that not many people are very much aware of. So when I was making this material, yun siya yun yung nasa isip ko, like, and this is, I hope this is gonna be
Mm.
useful for people kasi even ako, I only learned about the importance of asking questions noon ng like latter part of my career na. So yeah, thank you for having us today.
Mm.
Very excited for this topic.
Ayan. So, mamaya actually nung sa first part pala ng sinabi mo, parang ang dami ko ng gustong tanungin. Pero siyempre ire-reserve natin 'yan for later. So, ready
Correct.
na ba for your presentation?
I
Actually,
am.
eto,
Yeah.
basa lang tayo na ayan, okey daw yung icebreaker natin kanina. Nagising yung katawang lupa din nila actually. Ayan. So, ayan, game.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ron. And again, welcome everybody to this webinar hosted by Prospel. So this is like what Ron said earlier. This is part of their job interview tips or series rather. And if you're interested, you can check out their Facebook page. There are lots of good materials right there and previous webinars as well. But today we'll focus on the questions to ask during an interview. So, like what I said earlier, no, not everybody, and myself included, hindi natin or this is one of the things that we tend to overlook in an interview. Kasi most of the time we're just focusing really on how to respond to questions, how we'll carry ourselves, how we look, and all that stuff. But one thing that we also want to remember is that our interview starts the moment we enter the room, right? And it usually ends the moment we step out, whether it's a physical room or a virtual classroom, or sorry, a virtual meeting room rather. As long as you're there in the view and within the hearing of your interviewer, ina-assess ka nila one way or another. So that also covers how you answer this question. Do you have any questions? So think of all the interviews you've had in the past, whether you're a fresh graduate or you're already, let's say, at the middle of your career path. Path, ha? Hindi pwedeng fats. Whether it's an application for a job, for an internship, or for a promotion, or maybe for college application, law school application, whatever the case may be, this is a question that is always asked. And more often than not, the response is usually none, or I'm all good, thank you, or I don't have any questions. Now, sa totoo lang, there's nothing wrong if you don't have any questions, right? It's not bad to not ask questions. However, sometimes the reason why we respond with none, or wala po, or thank you, or I'm all good is because either we really do not have a question at that moment. Number two, either we're too scared to ask, like you're very curious about something, but you're just scared of being judged, or we some people tend to feel like if I ask questions, baka isipin ni interviewer like I didn't do my research enough, right? Or sometimes, and this happened to me too. Gusto mo nang tapusin yung interview. Like, gusto ko na pong umalis. I have no questions. I just gotta leave. So again, whatever the reason is, it's not necessarily bad to not have or to not ask questions. However, and hopefully after this webinar, this is one of the things that you guys would be taken with you as you go through your interviews in the future. It would be highly advisable to prepare one or two good questions for your interviewer. Again, those are the keyword there rather is good. You want to prepare one or two good questions that you would want to ask your interviewer. However, let's go ahead and talk about first why. Like, Hannah, this is an interview. I am supposed to be answering questions. Then why should we ask questions as well? Well, a short answer to that is number one, your questions might be just as critical as your answers. So, again, like what I mentioned earlier, the interview usually starts the moment you enter the room, whether, again, it's a meeting room or a physical room, a physical office. And within that interview, your response to that question, do you have any questions, might be just as critical as to how your interviewers would perceive you. And side note, if you have any questions for later, feel free to put in the chat box. We'll be answering that in a bit as well after our presentation. So that is the short answer to that. Your questions might just be as critical as your answers. A longer answer, though, is well, there I have four for you guys. Number one, it will showcase your intelligence and enthusiasm for the role. So let's take a look, or let's talk a little bit about that first. So imagine this: if you're in a conversation, you if you're really engaged in a conversation, di ba, usually you would ask questions as well to show number one that you're listening. Another thing is you'd be curious about things that they're talking about. For example, right now, I'm pretty sure some of you already have questions in your mind that you wanna ask me or Rawan for later. So that's I'd say that's a sign. that you're enthusiastic to engage in a conversation. Now, translating it to how it would be during the job interview and how you would be perceived as a candidate by your potential employer. Asking good questions, again, let me highlight that keyword. Asking good questions will showcase how intelligent, how curious, or how enthusiastic you are for the role that you are applying for. Kasi if you want to know something, you're going to ask for it. Again, as simple as it may seem, it is very important if that is something that you want to show your interviewers, right? But another point that I want to talk to you guys about would be the fact that it will actually help you become more memorable. So take this into consideration, my friends. You interviewer knew whether it's a recruiter or your hiring manager or even the director, most probably they've already had a long day. Or if not, most probably they've already talked to a number of candidates prior to you, right? Applying for a job, of course you're applying because you want the job. And one of the most, I'd say, important tips that you would want to remember is that you want to make sure that your interviewer remembers you. Well, hopefully in a good way, diba? But again, asking good questions will help you become more memorable. I remember when I was when I was still a recruiter, and even like a couple of years ago, when I was hiring for a new member of my team. Um, I tend to forget other candidates, but there are striking questions that lead me to considering a certain person for the job. So again, could go both ways. Could be memorable because bakit siya ganun magtanong, or memorable because it's a really good question. So later we'll be talking about sample questions that we can ask, right? But um yeah, that's one thing. Now, again, you would wanna be that person that your potential employer would remember you, um, or that would help your potential employer remember you because you're that person who asked intelligent questions as well, or highly relevant question. So more of that later. But our third point is this: asking good questions will actually help you decide if you really want the job. Now, perhaps this is not something that some of you expect. Maybe we're also focused on how, again, our employers would perceive us, but sometimes we forget that job application or applying for a job is a two-way process, right? A lot of employees, especially those who graduated, um, reach to the point where they are just desperate for just any job that would take them. And this is without judgment. This is very realistic, especially nowadays. I've talked to a number of people who would be, well, desperate is such a big term, but I'd say they are really looking for a job, to the point that it's more important for them to sell themselves than get to know what corporation or what company or what group they're trying to be part of. And this is one thing that I always tell my trainees whenever I get a chance. You would want to know the company that you're trying to be part of because it could make or break your career path. What do we mean by that? Asking questions, strategic, good questions, would help you understand, would help you get to know the employer. Parang take a look at it in a, let's say, more realistic way. Let's say you're establishing friendship or relationship with people, right? You are not only focused on how they see you, but you also want to get to know them. Same goes for your careers, my friends. So there, asking good questions will help you decide, do I really want this job? Gusto ko ba talagang maging ganito ang trabaho ko for the next year, for the next 2 years, 5 years of my life? Do I see myself part of a corporation that functions this way? So the answers to those questions would be based on how you will put your questions together and what questions you're going to ask. So um, nobody in a situation where you would just enter a company because you're desperate or because wala ka ng choice and people think that they do not have a choice, which is not true. Let me tell you now, regardless of how much job experience you have, there's a company, there's a team, there's a corporation that would be very lucky to have you. So if you just stick to, let's say, a job, but let me use the term settle. If you're just settling for a job or for a company that you're not really passionate about and that doesn't make your heart happy, um, it would only end up, or in after a while you'd realize that you do not you're you're just not happy, and life is too short to be not happy. And my friends, nobody wins in that situation, right? In If you get a job just because you're desperate for it, um you do not win. The interviewer does not win as well, kasi sayang yung oras, and definitely the company, they'd be investing money and resources on you. So you wanna you wanna make it, well, you as a person and them as well, both of the parties would want to make sure that it's worthwhile, it's worth everybody's time and worth everybody's effort. So there, and leading up to the last reason that I have here on the screen, why it's good to ask questions during an interview, is because it will help you see if you're a good fit for the company. Not only will it help you decide, gusto ko ba tong trabaho na to, or gusto ko ba talaga tong company na to, but another important point is, kaya ko ba? So is this something that I can, not only that I want to do, but is this something that I actually can do? A lot of people, well, fresh graduates, or even people who have been exploring different career paths in the past, um, sometimes people forget to be realistic, and this is a very, or asking good questions would help us, help bring us back to reality. That, yeah, one of the things that you want to gauge is, am I really fit for the job, and am I really fit for the company? Here we are talking about values, we're talking about goals, mission, vision, and our skill set as well. Don't get me wrong, and I'm pretty sure this has been covered in the past webinars as well by Prospel, but it doesn't mean that you have to be insecure about your skills just because you do not have job experiences yet. I understand that a lot of our viewers today are new graduates or do not have, intensive experiences just yet, but we want to be realistic as well. It's one thing to imagine yourself, or to know that you can do it and learn the skill and do it properly, as long as you get the proper training and support. But it's another thing to just put your head in the clouds and imagine rainbows and butterflies. So again, asking good questions would pull you back to reality. That, yeah, I think, not I think, but I can see myself doing this, and I'm pretty confident that I'm good. I'm a good fit for the company and for the role. So that is, or those are the long answers to question, why is it really important to ask good questions in an interview. So let me share with you guys a quote from Ryan Freshett. So he's a career coach in Korn Ferry Advance. Um, he said, "You're trying to assess if you'd be happy and excited working for them, just as much as they are trying to assess if you'd be a good fit on their team." So again, a reminder, and let me just reiterate this. Um, Guys, finding a job is a two-way process. Always remember that. Choosing an organization that you will be part of is critical in your career. It's critical for your growth as a professional. It's critical for your confidence. It's critical for your personal success, and critical even for your mental and physical health. I have seen people who decided to stay in a job that they're not happy about and only ended up, crumbling because they forget that. they forget to consider the fact that they are, human beings, and are part of a team, and not, forgive the term, but a slave of the corporation. So what am I saying here? You also want to assess if you'd be happy and excited to do the job, and if you would be happy and excited to be part of the team. Now, I'm happy to share that during my interview with Korn Ferry, that's one of the things that I was really, really um, critical about, yung feeling ko during the interview process, and how, they would answer questions, and how they would present, information, whatever it is that I need during the recruitment process and all that stuff. So, one of the tips that I'll give you guys that is not on the screen is that there, follow your gut feeling and assess. Be smart about it. Now, talking about being smart, here are some of the questions that you may ask during an interview. Now, as you prepare for your interview, and I hope that you do prepare for your interview, and this could be in different forms. Could be if it could be after you watching Prospel's webinars, which is a lot. You have 7 webinars to to rewatch. After you did your research about the company, after you read articles about job interviews and all that, you also want to prepare your own set of questions that you genuinely want to learn about. So again, make it part of your preparation, right? Have a set of questions that you would want to know. But I would suggest that you don't stick to it. Just like the questions that I'll show you guys in a bit, these are not black and white rules. Like, I'm not saying that these are the best questions and are the only questions that you should ask, because at the end of the day, you still wanna, be critical about it. You listen, you research, and then you ask questions that you think are relevant for the role and for the company that you are applying for. Now, without further ado, let me show you 6 questions that you may ask, and I would encourage you to ask during an interview. Starting off with the first one. As basic as it may seem, this question might actually be that make or be part of that make or break process of your application. Asking your interviewer, why is this position open? So be careful of your tone though. Ayaw mo namang magtunog na parang you're being critical, right? Ayaw mo namang magtunog na parang nang ginajudge mo sila. At the end of the day, the point of this question is just for you to help, or this is for you, is to help you identify if the position is open because of the company's growth. Like, nag-open ba sila ng nag-establish ba sila ng bagong teams? Or is it because of attrition, right? When we say attrition, it's when people leave the company. So meaning, are they trying to fill roles dahil maraming umalis. And if maraming umalis, it means it might, it might be a red flag. And I know that some of you like red flags. No, I'm kidding. Sana hindi. But when it comes to, again, your career pathing, those are the kinds of things that you want to look out for, right? Or is it because of something else, right? Is For example, did the person who previously held the post leave because they have other opportunities, right, that they wanted to grab, or something like that. So you may also learn more about the person who previously held that position, right? Or if this is the first time they are hiring for the role. If it's the first time, it means that you're going to be the pioneer of the team. If it's a and in a corporate world, being part of a pioneer team could be a really good opportunity for growth. So one of the things that you would want to consider, excuse me, what would want to consider. And moving right along to the second question, what are 2 things you are looking for that would indicate someone is best for this role? Now, you may paraphrase this question, so just like the rest of the questions that we're going to be talking about today. Pwede mong sabihin na, so what is it that you're looking for this role? Or sorry, you can also ask it in a way na, can what are the things that you really want to see in the best person who's applying for the role, or however you want to phrase it, right? The point is you want to identify. So anong hinahanap nyo? Basically, that's the gist of it. The reason why this is a good question to ask is because it's going to give you a better perspective of the role. There obviously you would have to read the job description, qualifications, but this question would help you get to know it in a more realistic sense, in a way that is not indicated in that job description that they have on LinkedIn, for example, or job sheet, or whatever the case may be. And another thing is that it would make it easier for you as a candidate to talk about topics that are aligned to the company's expectations. For example, if they say, na, yeah, the best person for this role is somebody who is good at organizing projects. Then you can start talking about, or you can flaunt about the projects you spearheaded, the projects that you handled, or whatever it is that is aligned to that. That's why I mentioned earlier, it's not a black and white rule, but it's a good opportunity for you to identify how you're going to position yourself. Because at the end of the day, an interview is about selling yourself, your skills to the company. So this question might be helpful for you. And same goes for the third question that we have here on the screen. What does success look like in this role? So, if the second question is focusing on the skills that the best person, or the role is, you know, expecting from the candidate, the third question is about the future, right? Um, how would the person who would have this role be successful? So there could be different answers to this. Could be performance or metrics, could be KPI, key performance indicator, could be, number based, could be scores, could be sales target, could be office politics, could be tenure. Let's see if the person, if your interviewer says, yeah, success looks like, or a person who would hold this role would be successful if they stay in the company for, let's say, a decade, 10 years, or 5 years, and hit the metrics that we have, or hit the sales target, and whatnot. So again, it would give you a better understanding of the company's culture as well, what they value as an organization. So it's use your spidey senses, use your wisdom to assess if that's something that you also value. Your values and what the company values as well should align. And fourth question that I would suggest that we also ask during the interview is this. So, and this is my favorite. What do you enjoy the most about working on this team? I really like asking this question. Well, I haven't been to like so many interviews naman, but this is also a question that I like receiving from applicants before. What do you enjoy about working on this team? Or could be in the form of, um, so what would you say is the best asset, or what would you say is the strength of your department, or of your team, or of the company, or of the organization, right? The reason why I like this is because you're going to get the candid response from the interviewer, not only as a manager, or as an interviewer or recruiter, but as an employee. Remember, you're going to be an employee. You're going to be part of the team. Might as well get to know the realistic side of it. How would it look like? What do you think are the best things if I'm going to be part of this company? Now, this would also be a good opportunity for you to assess if the camera is turned on, or if it's a face-to-face interaction, to assess how they would respond, if they really are happy about these things that they're talking about. I remember one good answer or response I got for this question was, well, the team is really supportive, and she didn't even think twice answering that. Like, the management is really supportive to the growth or to the plans that I have or to the the career growth that I am aiming for or something like that. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with asking the interviewer what they enjoy the most. However, we don't want to ask too personal questions, and we'll be talking more about that in a bit. So there you have it. Fifth question, or another question that we might ask is this: what are the challenges you've seen people in this role encountered? Or, um, what are the successes you've seen people in this role had in the past? So again, mahilig ako sa realistic perspective. I like reminding people to be realistic too. So this question would again give you a very realistic view of the role. It can't always be rainbows and butterflies, my friends. Regardless of how good the corporation is, even if it's your dream company, there'd be some challenges. Might as well hear about them as early as your interview process. You're not trying to trash talk the company or the role or whatever, but this is more for yourself, just to set your expectations, to set your own expectations, and again help you decide: is this a battle I want to fight? Is this a challenge that I can take on in the future? Is this a challenge that would be really helpful for my growth? Some things to consider, right? And then same goes again. If you're going to ask, what are the wins? What are the successes that people in this role encountered? It would give you an idea of what you can achieve in the future as well. Or if you're competitive like me, what what other milestones can I achieve and more? And that leads us to our last question for today, or sample question rather. When can I expect to hear about the next steps? Take note, my friends. It says when can I expect to hear the next steps, and not what the next steps are. Now, while it's not entirely bad to ask what the next part of the process would be, and most of the time, based on my experience, recruiters or interviewers would already give you or already set your expectations that you're going to hear from us within the week or in a couple of weeks to give you feedback. But it's also, if they forget, for example, there's nothing wrong with asking when you're going to hear from them. Why would we not recommend to ask what you should be doing afterwards or what the next steps are? Kasi it might seem like you're assuming that you already got the job. Now, is that bad? Not necessarily. If you can pull it off, then why not? My mentor before, Carl, if you're watching, hello. But my mentor told me before that you want to fake it till you make it and you want to wear the crown as if you own it. What does that mean? If you're aiming for a goal, dress the part. Or in your head, imagine that you're already there. However, you still, again, let me pull you back to reality. You still wanna be realistic about it. And again, para hindi tayo, alam mo yun, maging over the top, you wanna ask, so when can I hear about the result? That's the safest route to take, my friends. When can I hear feedback? When can I expect the result? Nobody wants to, be ghosted, right? Gusto natin properly set ang expectations. So, there you have it. Now, some additional points that are not included here on the screen, you can also ask about things that are, valuable to you, which would give me, this is more like a side note, right? You may also take that opportunity to ask things that you value as an individual, as an employee. Number one, um, company culture, right? How would you describe your, let's say, corporate culture? Let me zoom in. There you go. How would you describe your corporate culture? Or how is the company culture in Korn Ferry, for example? Or what is it that you value the most as an organization? You may hear other companies value mental health, for example, or let's say sustainability, or the environment, or employees growth, or something like that. Whatever the response would be, again, it would be very helpful for you to understand what the culture is, if that's something that you truly value. Another thing, another suggestion would be extracurricular activities. Some people are very curious about other things that they can do in the organization other than just doing their job, whatever is in their job descriptions. For example, some questions that you can also ask: are there social or environmental activities or events that employees could take part of? For example, here in Korn Ferry, we also have lots of other activities, especially before the pandemic, based on what I saw on their on our social media pages as well before I joined the company. They also do outreach programs, and other activities inside and outside the office. Another thing is, what activities do your employees do to unwind? If that's something that they have. So another question that you may ask is employee engagement. Same goes for extra or similar to extracurricular activities, right? You can position it this way. Well, I'm curious about the company, or I'm curious about the employee engagement activities you have in the organization. For example, here in Korn Ferry, we have monthly town halls. There's food, there's games, there are contests, and all that stuff. So different companies, different organizations have their own. If you're curious about it, if that's something you value, you might want to ask about it as well. And lastly, other job expectations. Now, mind you, we're not yet talking about the salary here. We're only talking about the work setup. Especially now here in the Philippines, would we be in the hybrid setup for now, or work at home? Now, most of the time, this is part of the expectations that would be discussed to by your recruiter. But in case it's not tackled just yet, you may also ask about them as well. Feedback or coaching sessions. This is one of the things that I also asked when I was being interviewed. Where the role fit in the organization, training opportunities, or onboarding process, or management style. Although these questions, the especially the fourth item, the other job expectations line item, I'd suggest you ask it at the latter part of the interview, let's say final interview, instead of asking it in the initial interview, because this is when you go deeper, or this is when you start digging deep into what the organization really is about. So there, you can ask other questions. Again, the point is you ask questions that are valuable to you. I remember asking about their mental health program as well. I asked, so what do we have an existing mental health program, or activities that help the employees? So one thing that you may also want to consider. So those are, well, it might be again a lot, but these are not the only questions that you can ask. You can explore, you can research, but make sure, my friends, that when you ask a question, make sure that it has not been answered yet, because it wouldn't make sense, right? Na discuss na sa'yo, itatanong mo pa ulit. Instead of it being, a good point during your interview, baka maka-affect pa yun sa active listening skills mo, and how they would perceive you as well. So, be smart about it, pay attention, listen, and take note of the other tips as well when asking questions during an interview. So this is the last point that I have, or the last set of tips that I have for you guys. I know that I have talked about a lot of things, but here are just some do's and don'ts that I wanna share with everyone. Starting off with the don'ts first. The first three items. Number one, don't ask what the company does or what the role is. Now, I know I said that it is important that you understand what the company is, what the job would be about, but this is something that you should already know before you even or before you even enter the interview room, right? Do your research. For example, if you're applying for Corn Ferry, you want to know what Corn Ferry is about. You want to know what the company values, what are the mission and vision, that would also help you, or what the role is about. If you're applying as an, let's say, sales associate, you should already know what a sales associate does. You can dig deeper. You can ask questions how it would be in that specific company, but you should already, again, have an idea what it is. So another point is don't ask about salary and or allowance and or other benefits yet, especially not during the initial interview yet. Now, other some recruiters would be okay with it. I would personally suggest that you don't, because you'd want this is or your salary, your allowance, your benefits. These are things that would be discussed by your recruiter. It's part of the process, especially with the salary. Um, hindi pwedeng hindi. Guys, huwag kayong papasok sa company na hindi dinidiscuss sa inyo magkano ang magiging salary nyo or what's covered, what your benefits are. It should be indicated in your contract. Remember that. But then again, why should we not ask it during the initial interview? Because it's part of the process, and it would be definitely would be discussed to you at the latter part of the application process. Another thing that we don't want to ask, I mentioned this earlier, and let me just reiterate this. Don't ask controversial and highly personal questions. I have to indicate this because I remember before I had an experience when a person or when a candidate asked me. So I asked him first, so do you have any questions? And the question I got was, yeah, are you single? Friends. Remember, this is a professional interview, regardless of how casual or how engaging your interviewer is, right? No matter how fun the interview is, you should still remember that this is a professional interaction, and we want to keep it that way. And another part of the controversial questions, let's say their opinion about certain political issues, or gender roles and whatnot. Now, let me just take or side note rather, you can also ask about if you're very or if one of the things that you value in a company is how they value equality, you may ask that as well. But I would really suggest that you keep it not suggest, but I would want to remind you to keep it professional at all times. So there, personal questions you may ask. How long they've been in the company, perhaps, so that you can hear more about their experiences. But yeah, nothing too personal. And I would like to add a note here. Don't ask too many questions, especially during the initial interview. I know I've shared a lot, but um, you might not want to bombard your interviewer with too many questions. What's the number of questions that I would suggest? One or two questions are good, maybe maximum of three questions. Asking more than that might be detrimental even because it might be too bombarding, or it might not be something that your interviewer would appreciate, or you may go overboard. So there, remember, even if it's really good to ask questions, anything in excess isn't beneficial at all. Now, some or my three of my final tips for today. Number one or number four, rather. Kaya ako nag-English major, hindi magaling magbilang. I'm kidding. So, number four, tailor your questions based on what the company or role is about. This is why I always keep on saying do your research, right? And then tailor fit your questions based on what you've found out. For example, a possible prefacing statement would be, I saw on your social media page that you that you guys have a lot of projects in relation to let's say equality. So are there any chance that the role that I'm applying for can take part of that actively? Or something like that, right? So it would be a good indication, or it would be a good strategy to let the person or let your interviewer know that, oh yeah, they did their research, and they really are curious about what we do. So another item would be mindful of your tone and phrase your questions positively. Positive scripting, my friends, is very important, not only during your interview but in your career as well, in any organization that you will be part of. you still want to be respectful, even if you are curious, even if you're asking questions about the company, even if you're trying to understand or to get to know the company or the interviewer. You want to make sure that you are still, respectful and positive with your interaction with your recruiter, because if you get the job, they'd be your colleagues. So you want to establish your relationship with them positively as early as today, or as early as your interview. And even if you don't get the job, um most of the time companies would keep you in the list of their potential candidates in the future if you would allow them to. Usually, they would ask for of course, they would ask for your permission. So, you don't want to burn bridges. Right? And lastly, my friends, and the very important one some people tend to forget sometimes, thank the interviewer for accommodating your questions. So I suggest that you ask questions, but also, they're people too. Regardless of how fun they seem or how intimidating they seem, you would want to show your appreciation, because whether or not you get the job, they accommodated your curiosity and your questions, and gave you time and effort as well. So let me just end my presentation with this quote from our CEO here in Korn Ferry, Gary Bernison. He said, "Your questions should be smart and strategic. The questions you ask also show the interviewer how you think." So, like what I said earlier, not only are your answers important, but also the questions that you will throw, right? However, we shouldn't just ask any questions. Hindi porket baka during your interview sabi niya, sabi ni Hannah magtanong daw ako eh. Anong favorite number mo sa electric fan? So hindi ganon. Though it's true that there's no such thing as bad questions, sure, but there are irrelevant questions. There are unflattering questions. There are unnecessary questions. So a good interviewer would accommodate most, if not all, of your questions, sure, but a better candidate, a better interviewee would know which questions to ask. And that is an excellent way of flaunting your wisdom, your how smart you are, and how enthusiastic you are in joining the company. So if you guys have any, or if you guys would need help preparing for that interview, one of the features that we have in KF Advance or Corn Fair Advance is like a one-way or self-paced preparation or interview practice. You may learn more about that on our website. That's kfadvance.com. You may also scan this QR code that you're seeing on the screen. Side note, and if you also watched our or Prospel's webinar last week, KF Advance or Corn Fair Advance would also offer an AI tool that would help you, or that would assess or analyze rather your resume, and would give you tips on how to improve your resume. So if that's something that you need, if that's a tool that you think would be helpful for you as you find the best company and yes, you go through your interviews, KF Advance might be really helpful. So go ahead and scan this. You may take a screenshot of this page as well, or go visit our website, kfadvance.com, or you may also shoot us a message on our social media pages. We have Facebook and Instagram, and that's at Corn Ferry Manila. Or if you want to read articles, we also have a lot of job interview articles available on our website. That's cornferry.com. So when you go to the website, just go to the upper right hand corner, search, and then type job interview. You'd see a lot of articles from all over the world. So I hope that you got something out of that webinar, and I hope that after this webinar, you're gonna leave this room more confident about the next about how you would handle yourselves and how you would throw questions to your interviewer. And yeah, thank you so much for listening, everybody.
Naririnig mo ba ako?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Hi,
Yan.
Roan.
Ang dami kong side comments habang nasa backstage. Kasi ano, personally bago rin sa'kin 'tong idea na 'to, eh, kasi parang For me, parang sobrang one-sided ng line of questioning or parang mostly ang perspective ko before ay yung interviewer lang yung magtatanong, gano'n.
Mhm. Correct.
Kaya
Ako din naman, when I only learned about the value of this like a couple of years ago lang, kasi like what you said, many people are intimidated during the interview.
mm,
And that's understandable. And that's why we're here. That's why I like that we have this session. Kasi para
mm,
people would see na, yeah, it's okay. It's okay to ask. It's okay to be curious. Again, it's a two-way street.
oo. Kaya in line dun yung first question natin. Wow, nai-segue. Yan. Parang any tips on how to build confidence when asking questions during a job interview? Kasi nga 'di ba, parang sobrang nakaka-intimidate, parang paano ko
Mhm.
tatanungin 'to? Kasi parang dapat ako yung tinatanong. Ganun yung point of view natin before, eh.
That's true, and I like this question. Confidence is a very critical aspect, whether during the interview or even until now. Even if you get promoted, confidence should always be there. But I get that when you're asking a question during the interview, how do you deliver it in a very confident manner? Well, mindset ba? you have
Mindset
to
na mindset.
you have to remember na you're not ano naman you're not um paano ba, trying to be bashful, hindi ka naman nagiging disrespectful. You are showing that, or in your head, you want to look at it in a way that you are just curious about this because you are excited to learn more about the corporation. So if in your head, if that's the mindset that you have, and not because you are and forget the part na na ina-assess ka pa rin nila. If you're gonna be natural about it, because that's basically my rule of thumb. Just be yourself, because that's very important. Kung hindi ka nila magustuhan because of how you presented yourself, then it means that you're not a perfect fit. So at the end of the day, it's better to be yourself and not get the job than get the job and spend years not being yourself. It would be sad. So
Kung
there.
ayaw nila, eh, di don't, 'di ba?
Ah, ayaw mo diwag. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, basically, yeah, that's
Oo,
it.
oo. Kasi kasi yun nga, parang ang hirap din kasi na meron kang gustong itanong pero hindi mo alam kung paano mo ide-deliver kasi kailangan ng matinding ano, eh, confidence, eh, 'di ba? Na ma-deliver mo siya in a right
Yeah.
way,
That's
ayun.
true. That's true. Maybe a short answer, last answer to that question is you try to establish that rapport with your interviewer. Kasi
Hmm,
once it's there, just like in any situation, kapag ikaw mismo physically and mentally kalmado ka, confidence would follow. Like hindi mo na siya iisipin as an assessment, but more of a really an interaction and getting to know each other. Para ka nasa date, parang ganun.
ayan. So eto meron tayong isa pang question dito. Sabi ni Judith, what if the interviewer doesn't give you time to ask questions? Like in a hurry, should I still ask questions?
Ah, this is a good one. If you can feel and if you know na wala talagang chance for you to ask questions, then it's better not to. Kasi at the end of the day, you want to value their time. If they really won't give you any opportunity at all, then that's okay. I'm pretty sure you're gonna get that opportunity in the future. But if there are things that you really want to know, my suggestion is before the end of the interview, and if those questions are questions that you deem important, just set expectations to the recruiter that, hey, for example, Hannah, hey Hannah, I know that we don't have a lot of time, so I'll be sending you an email. I just have a couple of questions, and I would love it if I'd get or if you have time, you can shoot me an email back, and I'd appreciate it, or something like that.
Eto, meron pa tayong isang question dito. Siguro ano 'to, ito sa ito yung mga isa sa mga supporters mo. Sabi ni Loki fangirl is asking about a specific part of their work culture. Example, how employees spend their lunches, if there are employees around your age group, a good question or an irrelevant one?
Ah, I would say that this is a good question. One of kasi during interviews I also ask a lot. Ako yung aplikante na dami pag binigyan mo ng opportunity magtatanong talaga ako. So this is actually a realistic question and I like it because it would again like what I mentioned earlier, it would paint you a picture of how it goes in their day-to-day lives, especially if you're going to throw this question, let's say during your second or last interview, right? You're gonna see it's important. I won't say that it's irrelevant because it's not. Um, Employees around your age group, this is also a good question. And this would be a good opportunity for companies, for the corporation to show off their diversity, for example. And based on their responses to this, it would be a good opportunity for them to promote the culture, that good culture that they have in the team or in the company. So a shorter answer, yes, I'd say that this is a good question to ask.
Ito, tanong naman ni Roka, "Hi Hannah and Ron." Hala, pati ako sasagot, charot. "Can you please share your own experience during interviews? Like, what questions did you ask and how it went well?"
Oh, sige. Ako muna Roan tapos ikaw.
Sige, kasali ako, sige.
So, my during interviews, what questions I asked? Like what I said, I asked a lot of questions, but when I was applying for for Korn Ferry na lang, yung latest interview that I had. One of the questions I asked was their mental health program or if it's part of their of the benefit or it's if we have programs or activities like that because I'd say that that's one of the critical parts of being an employee. I wanna know basically if I'd have that opportunity to take part of programs or if it's gonna be something that I'm gonna get as an employee. But I asked that during the final interview na. And another question that I asked was, remember I shared about my favorite question. So how are you, or what do you like the most about being part of this company? I usually ask my interviewers that question because again, I like that you capture or I get to capture the candid responses, like kung ano talaga yung totoo. Makikita mo yung kasi magugulat, some of them magugulat
Mm,
sila. So tapos makikita mo na kung paano yung reaction nila, and I like that one of the things I consider really when I join a company is how they would respond to questions like that. Usually, and mag-light up yung face. They'd be excited to tell you more about it. So there, those are some of the questions that I asked. It went well, especially here during my interview with Corn Ferry. And this is without bias. My interview process with Corn Ferry or my application process was really fun, I'd say. As you can see, I like fun things. I like making things fun. And that was, I loved how, and it went well. I mean, when I asked questions like those, it went well in a way that it became a conversation, and that's one of the things, my friends, that you also would wanna have. You wanna have conversations with your interviewers, not just you know questions and answers na parang quiz. So there.
mm. Hala, nakaka-pressure naman, charot.
Grabe eh, hindi ako Roan
Siguro yung ishe-share ko yung, interview ko before Prospel. Kasi share ko lang na more than a month pa lang ako sa Prospel. Wow, akala mo ano na ako
Oh.
'no, ilang taon na ako. Kung umasta, wow, charot. So yung ano, yung feel ko kasi na parang meron kasing type of interviewer na hindi ko alam if sobrang poker face niya lang or parang feel ko hindi ako matatanggap. May gano'n kasi 'di ba?
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
ang tinanong ko ay parang, nasagot ko ba lahat ng questions niya and parang enough na ba yung answers ko? And if kung hindi, ano pa yung mga gusto niyang malaman? Parang gano'n. Kasi
Huh.
parang, saan ako nagkulang? Charot.
Oh no.
Charot.
But
Pero
I like
ayun,
that. Mm-mm.
oo. Kasi parang, mindset ko, recently na if interview gusto ko na mabigyan ko ng justice yung lahat ng na-experience lahat ng work experience ko, lahat ng kaya kong i-offer. So, yung sa last part lagi kong mini-make sure na kung may gusto pa silang malaman, parang ginagawa kong open-ended if may gusto pa silang malaman na hindi ko nabanggit, na hinahanap nila. Ayun.
That is very smart. Very smart 'yon as a candidate. I would suggest guys kopyahin niyo 'yon. Kasi it's a good opportunity for you to show it off. And just before I forget, I missed this earlier. It's better not to ask about the result during
Mm.
that interview. Instead, you can ask like what Roan did, right? Ask if you were able to answer all the questions, but not the result. Don't ask. So did they pass? Because if you did or if you didn't, they tell you. You'd
Mm.
know. If not during that day, then eventually, right? But yeah, yeah, that's a good one. Thanks, Roan. Oh, ako
Na-validate
nag-interview.
ako. Na-validate ako. Charot. Need pala ng validation.
Kung ba mag-usap after this?
Parang debriefing ata yung ano, after. So, meron pa tayong questions dito.
Mm.
Ayan. Ah, eto. Tanong ni Kobe, should I learn a lot of interview questions with their typical good answers? Or should I be naturally honest on the spot? What would an interviewer appreciate more?
This is also a good question. To answer, let me answer the second question first. What would an interviewer appreciate more? An interviewer would always appreciate preparation. So if you're there prepared, whether with your answers or with your questions, that would be a good one. However, you don't want to make it too scripted. So, what to answer the first question, should I learn a lot of interview questions with their typical good answers? Um, you may, but kasi ang tendency is, and I've witnessed this before, people who would research, usual questions and then, have like a default answers in their head. It's going to be difficult for your interviewer to get to know who you are. So I would suggest be more natural, get familiar with common questions, but also be prepared for out of the box questions. Because if I were your interviewer, I like throwing random questions right there to, especially if na-notice ko na scripted or pinractice to, yon, I would throw questions like those. So again, Kobe, this is a good question. But to answer your question, I'd rather that I would suggest that you prepare for it, but don't memorize a script or whatever. Be natural, be honest, and pay attention. Listening is very important during the interview because then would you be able to come up with smart responses and smart questions as well.
Tapos meron pa tayong iba pang mga questions dito. So, tatanungin natin lahat, ah. So, itatanong
Okay.
natin sige. Ito, parang should I always be a yes kind of person during the interview? Tanong ni Josiah.
Hi
Okay.
Josiah. No. A short answer to that question is no.
Mm.
Should I always be a yes kind of person? As an interviewer, I don't always I'd say mas gusto ko talaga yung totoong person yung kausap ko kesa kasi you'd see as an especially the interviewers or if you're talking to a seasoned interviewer or recruiter or hiring manager, they'd know if you're not telling the truth. They'd know if you're only giving them answers that they want to hear. And although there are people who would appreciate that, sa ngayon, based on my observation, lalo puro millennials na and Gen Zers ang interviewers natin, they'd want to see who you are. And that's why, that brings me back to my point earlier, right? Bring it out. What's your personality? Let them see it, although not too much. Alam mo yun, just manage it. So yeah, and a good question or a shorter answer to this question, Adele, is you don't have to be the yes kind of person, not only during the interview but in life as well. Right? Hindi dapat. You should know who you are and you should know how to position yourself and you should stand your ground during the interview or outside.
Mm. Parang dito pa lang mas-te-test na yung pag-set mo ng boundaries, 'di ba?
Exactly.
And sige,
Yes.
go.
No, I'm just saying that that's a good point because if umpisa pa lang, tama ka, Roan, if umpisa pa lang, oo ka lang ng oo, paano ko bigyan ka ng, sandamakmak na task?
Mm.
So, oo ka pa rin ng oo, ikaw din mahihirapan and that would lead to burnout. And
Mm.
burnt out is not a good experience, my friends.
Mm. Ayun, parang dito talaga malalaman mo parang mage-gauge din nila na parang kung paano ka as an employee, 'di ba, na kung nag-stand ka ba sa ground mo na alam mo yung deserve mo kaya minsan nagno-no ka, 'di ba? So,
Correct,
ayan.
correct. And sometimes may mga tricky questions kasi na
Mm.
titingnan nila kung paano mo siya i-handle. So yeah, that's a good point, Roan. So there.
Tanong naman ni Roby, what specific questions can I ask to somehow establish a rapport with the interviewer?
This is a good question. So, questions that you can ask to somehow establish the rapport. I'd usually go with, "Hi, how are you?" That's always the start, and they would give you a response like, "Yeah, I'm okay. How about you?" And then that's where the challenge would come in, like awkward silence. Na after that, usually, naman, your recruiters would initiate that rapport building, right? But I would also suggest that because you'll do your research prior to your interview, I would suggest that you would base your topics on those things that you found out during your research. Like what I shared earlier, if you saw on their page that they had this event before, you may you may talk about it. Or if you what else? If you want to talk about even the cliche ones like the current, I won't suggest the weather, boring na yun. Topics or events rather that you think your interviewer might be interested in. So usually kapag wala kang idea about the person, hit and miss. Just like in any relationships or situation or friendships or whatever, right? But yeah, this is a good question, and a shorter answer to this question is it depends on how you would feel during the interview. It's better to let it flow naturally. But first you have to relax para gumana yung utak mo, and just again, chika ka but stay professional.
So, meron pa rin talagang ano 'no, meron pa rin talagang kung for example nabanggit mo kanina na kung ano yung current events, like for example, what if, anong tawag dun, election. So, baka mapasok yung politics kaya ang hirap, 'di ba? So,
Correct.
talagang meron talagang mga filters na dapat i-take.
Oo, totoo yun. And you have to remember that. Naalala ko na yung sagot ko sa, yung question ko sa interview ko before was, the work at home setup. Oh, so are you at home? Kasi usually on camera, oh, I can see that I can see your background. Are you at home? Ganon. Yung mga ganon chika lang.
Mm. So with that, tanong ni Rachel, how to stand out from other candidates when you don't have any experience. So, siguro in line na rin sa mga questions na puwedeng matanong. Paano ba mag-stand out, 'di ba?
Mm.
Meron bang tips and tricks diyan kung ano yung mga questions na
This is a good
bida-bida
one
gano'n,
too.
charot.
Oh. One way to stand out, number one, is you want to be smart about your questions. That's a very broad answer, but that's the the easiest answer that I could give. But other than that, it brings me back to when I was hiring the last person I hired before. She asked me very specific questions about the job, and I was not expecting it. She would ask questions about how the day, how day to day life looks like as a trainer. She asked me about um the interaction, the relationship within the team. So for me as a hiring supervisor that time was very striking because I did not expect a person to be, to throw questions like that to me. So that was how she stood out, and she got the job. I liked how bold she was. Now standing out as a candidate would take a lot, or might take a lot rather, and you may revisit other videos of Prospel to learn more about the other tips, right? But there,
Mm.
in relation to question, that's a good one. Be specific, and I would suggest stay away from questions that the usual questions. So stay away from the questions I talked about today. No, I'd say be specific, tailor fit your
Mm.
question.
So ito, nabanggit mo kanina sa presentation mo yun, huwag muna agad magtanong, in relation to salary. So, itong question na 'to ay, any tips on how to ask questions about salary negotiation 'pag na-bring up na yung salary?
Mm, this is a good one. So usually hindi to mangyayari. I mean, based on my experience, hindi naman siya nangyayari ng initial interview. But in case, or in case that you're really curious and you really wanna know onset pa lang ng application mo, you can position it in again, positive scripting, right? You can ask, may I know when we can discuss the salary or the benefits or the package that comes with it. Or you can also, for example, if you applied on um, Job Street, let's say, or other platforms, sometimes there are like range, right, of how much the salary is. You can start talking, or you can mention that, just making sure that we're on the same page on the platform. It said that this is the salary range. Would this be a good time to talk about it? Or would we have a separate discussion about it in the future? Excuse me, or something like that. So yes, I would not suggest that we ask it on set of the interview, but if it ever comes up, and if your interviewer initiates that conversation, then might as well take advantage of it. Just don't seem to ano ba, sobrang excited to the point na parang yun na yung focus no no
Mm.
interview mo. Ayun.
Itong, last two questions natin, ano siya, medyo personal,
Ay.
ayan. Hala, sabi kanina wag daw magtanong ng personal questions. Eto, name one question na sana
Hmm.
tinanong mo before as a fresh grad sa job interview mo before.
This is a good one. And I was thinking about this actually when I was making this material. It led me to my experiences when I
Throwback.
was just so ang dami kong pinagdaanang emotions. No. But in a more straightforward response to this, I hope I learned how to ask about the culture of the company. That's one. Another thing is how job expectations wise, kasi I used to be very passive with my job applications. Parang yung sinabi mo kanina, I'm one of those people who would really just take like what Adele said earlier na yes lang ng yes sa sa mga bagay-bagay. Can you do this? Yes. Can you take on this role? Yes. Kahit hindi naman. So, I hope I gave myself the opportunity to learn more about how the job would really function, get to know what the job really is and what entails and what are expected of me. And then I hope I also learned how to ask um, what the success looks like in the role. That's my favorite. If I'd have that opportunity and if I would, how I'd get there. So yun. And last is I hope I learned how to ask about the mental health and other advocacies rather of the organization because I always say this a lot, values ng company ay very important talaga sa pag-design, sa the way you design the career path in your head. Kasi, again, it might make or break you. So, might as well get to know about it as early as your interview.
Sobrang agree ako dun 'no, yun dun sa kung ano yung advocacies or kung ano yung stand nila about mental health. Kasi,
Correct.
ah, for example, yung mga boomers, parang hindi nila ganun bina-value yun and kaya, bold ano lang 'to statement, na ngayon parang sobrang empowered na talaga ng young millennials and Gen Z na alam nila talaga kung ano yung deserve nila and parang nagse-set na talaga ng boundaries and kaya ayun, gusto ko lang i-point out na, tingin ng mga boomers na parang ang entitled na, pero sobrang natutuwa ako dun sa empowerment ng kabataan natin ngayon, 'di ba?
Mm-hmm. That's true. And let me just say that a good organization would acknowledge that and would,
Mm,
you know, do something to address that as well because times are changing, whether we like it or
yes.
not. So, although hindi naman lahat ng boomers, obviously,
Hindi naman hindi naman nagge-generalize, pero ayun.
but I agree with you na isa na siya sa mga pinaka-important, aspects that lots of employees or candidates are looking for.
Mm.
So, yeah, just if that's something, again, if that's something you value as an individual, as an employee, then go for it. Ask about it.
Ayan. So yung last question natin. In one word, how would you describe your fresh grad job hunting experience before? So medyo malatito boy ito, no? Fast talk.
Oo. This is an interesting question. One word lang.
Puwede naman
um
puwede naman anong tawag dun, i-explain.
Expound. Okay. So
Mm.
I would say it's okay. The safest word that I can think of right now is challenging. But if I'm gonna be honest about it, chaotic because of the experiences. So ayokong i-reveal yung age ko, no, but I graduated some time ago. So back then, hindi pa wala pa masyadong opportunities like this, like what Prospel offers to fresh graduates. Ano talaga nun, kung mag-a-apply ka, pupunta ka sa office, right? Yung CV mo naka-print pa. Kita may picture pa yun. Tapos yung expectations wala masyado. And that was, and again, I was a fresh grad. Um, yung expectations ko masyado pang idealistic. In my head, again, that's why I mentioned earlier, it's not always rainbows and butterflies because I learned it the hard way. It really isn't. So yeah, I'd say challenging at best because expectations were not set. The preparedness, I thought I was prepared. I thought I was good until I went through all of that, and then I started experiencing rejection. Imagine, and I know that a lot of you guys can relate to this, yung mga competitive dyan, yung mga grade conscious dyan nung college or high school. Tapos pagdating nyo sa pag-apply nyo dun sa dream company mo, boom, rejected ka. So it's not an easy experience, but let me just say that it's okay because eventually, not eventually, but you're going to learn something from that experience. And that's something right there, something that you can use as you go through other experiences. So, although it's a lot easier said than done to just get up and move on, it's not always easy. But again, mindset, right? Wala na eh. It's over. But and this is what actually pushed me to do well before. Mayabang pa ako noon. Sabi ko, mag-apply ulit ako dyan sa company na yan. Tatanggap na ako. Hindi na ako ulit nag-apply kasi kasi well, I found better companies like Korn Ferry, but that's basically it. You do what you can to move forward. It's gonna be chaotic, and a lot of you right now are very scared. And believe me, that's okay. Ilang taon na ako nagwo-work until now during interviews, kinakabahan pa rin ako. And again, I say this a lot if I have trainees before who would hear me say this, I'd be more worried if you're not nervous. Because if you're not nervous, it means you don't want it enough. So the fact that you are a little bit nervous right there means that you want it. And that desire right there is what's gonna push you to do really well. So if you're scared, if you're nervous, that's okay. Take a deep breath. Prepare yourself because if you're prepared, you'll feel more confident. If you're more confident, you're gonna have more fun. And yeah, that's, I'd say, my last tip for today. Have fun, you guys. Whether you get the job or not, have fun because a company is out there who would meet the standards that you're looking for, the values that you have, and you want to find that company for you.
Grabe, iyak lang ako sa gilid, charot. Ang comforting lang kasi parang alam mo yun, parang nagfa-flashback talaga, 'no? Parang gaya nung sabi mo, parang fresh grad tayo, parang sinabak tayo agad. Parang, hala, start na
Oo.
pala ng adult life, gano'n. Na parang, hala, parang bakit wala man lang orientation, gano'n.
Correct.
Bakit walang pa-seminar, ganyan.
Oo,
Kaya
walang pa
ayun.
gan'to 'no, walang pa webinar
Mm,
sila. So
mm.
that's true. It's scary. Ang daming beses ko
Mm,
umiyak no'n, but we're here
mm.
now, and that's what matters.
Mm,
Where you're gonna get from here, and it's not gonna end with one job rejection, you guys. Just be
mm.
prepared, have fun, and watch videos and visit our website. You'd be good.
Mm. Yan na-i-promote pa 'no, 'di ba? So so ayun, sobrang dami ako rin personally ang dami kong natutunan and parang looking back, parang nadadala din ako dun sa pagkuwento mo dun sa timeline mo, nadadala din ako dun sa personal experience ko. And thank you so much for your time and effort to be here, Hannah. So
Thank
ayan,
you.
sobrang dami talaga namin natutunan. And yung mga viewers natin, as in nag-stay sila hanggang dulo. And sobrang importante talaga ng may mga pagganto na ngayon. Sobrang true nung sinabi mo, hindi dahil nagwo-work ako sa Prospel, pero sobrang importante talaga nitong mga ganitong types of event, mga webinars, mga seminars para talaga ma-prepare yung mga students
Mm.
natin today. Kasi hindi naman to tinuturo sa classroom natin eh, di ba? Walang subject para
Oo.
dito. Sobrang life skills to. Yun, yung
Totoo.
tumanggap ng acceptance tumanggap ng rejection, ganyan, and all.
Totoo.
Ayan.
So, abangan niyo
So
yung mga webinars pa, my friends.
oo.
You're gonna learn a
Mm.
lot. Take advantage
Tapos
of it.
ano na daw, magyu-YouTuber na daw si Miss Hannah.
Di ba sabi mo, maggagawa tayong podcast, Roan?
Podcast, ayun. Oh, 'di ba may invite. Oh, ano na 'to, parang medyo soft launch.
Well, thank you so much, Ron. I really had fun, and I hope that our viewers also learned something from this webinar. There are still a lot of things to learn, my friends. So, wag mahihiyang magtanong.
May
And
recommend ba
yeah,
ito?
but hindi ko na nga tinuloy. But yeah, just take advantage of these opportunities. Again, thank you so much. Thanks, Ron. I really had fun. Thank you for inviting Korn Ferry, and yeah, we're looking forward to having more sessions like this with you guys.
Sige, i-prepare ko na yung next invitation. Ayan. So, para sa mga viewers natin, para i-claim yung e-certificate of attendance nyo, just visit this link para doon sa feedback and para sa e-certificate nyo. And next week, huwag nyo kakalimutan, meron tayo ulit session. Thursday, syempre, di ba? Career Talk Thursdays. Ayan. Ito, in line do sa first question natin kanina. Confidence building for job hunting as a fresh grad. Ito, mas pag-uusapan natin kung paano ba natin mabe-build yung confidence natin, 'di ba? Kasi yun nga sabi ni Miss Hannah, pag confident ka, parang may enjoy mo talaga yung interview eh. Ayan. So,
Correct.
wag din nating kalimutan na mag-sign up sa ph.prospel.com kung hindi pa kayo nakaka-sign up. And that's it for today. Meron pa tayo ulit next Thursday. So, meron pa ba ikaw last words, Miss Hannah, before we officially end this live stream?
I just want to tell all the audience, whether this is your first time job hunting or you've been, a professional for a while, that you can. Regardless of what it is that you think, you can. Whatever it is that you want to achieve, you can. Just work hard for it and ask questions, and take advantage of resources that you have right here. That's it for me. Thank you so much,
Ayan.
Roanne and everybody.
Ayan. Ang daming nagte-thank you sa comment section. Pero ayan, sabi, thank you so much, Miss Hannah. Number 24 po, favorite number ko sa fan.
Yay!
Ayan,
Thank
guys.
you.
And that ends our Career Talk Thursdays, job interview tips, questions to ask during an interview. Thank you so much for joining us today. Once again, I'm your host, Roanne. Follow us and stay tuned on our social media channels for update and kita-kits ulit tayo sa Thursday. Bye,
Bye,
guys. And thank you
guys.
so much, Miss Hannah.
Thanks, Ron.
Bye.
Bye bye.